Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmate. My name is Mark Christopher Latoy. I'm BCE 4A. This morning, the topic that I'm going to tackle is about contracts and specifications and engineering relations. In this topic, we're going to know about the engineering and its education. The first is the function of engineer. The function of an engineer are: 1. Designer. Engineer's duty is to formulate an ideal and from it to create a reality. 2. A supervisor. Engineer must see that the works which have been created from his plan and under his supervision properly fulfill the function for which they are designed. 3. Constructor. Engineer must develop ideas and elaborate plans. He must also consider and prescribe the methods of manners of construction. 4. Investigator. Engineer must investigate conditions and determine means by which those conditions can be utilized or modified to meet certain ends. And 5th, advisor. Engineer must advise his employer as to the feasibility of the project proposed, the cost which will be entailed, and results which will be accomplished. The field of engineering work includes all those branches of technical service and of business and professional work which have to do with the utilization of natural resources for human benefit. The function of engineering service is the adaptation of the law and resources of nature to utilitarian purposes. It is usually involved the practical consideration of the active utilization of natural conditions and natural resources through construction. Engineering in its broadest extent includes the trades, the business, and the profession. The skilled artisan and the mechanic and the skillful draftsman are the fundamental practical units of engineering trade. The manufacturer, the builder, and the contractor represent engineering business and are the active agents in the realization of the ideal in concrete form and frequent in the development of these ideals. The designer and estimator, the inspector and superintendent, and the assistant engineer are the fundamental units of engineering profession. The positions of great responsibility, however, usually involve so great a degree of personal devotion and the sacrifice of many of those personal pleasures of life that demands a large amount of time and energy in their enjoyment, that there are few who are willing to pay the price for the greatest professional success. All engineering success is a consequence of personality, native ability, opportunity, and application. Normally, it may be achieved just to extent the individual is willing to pay the price of intelligent devotion to its attainment. Engineering relations. In fulfilling the duties of vocation, whether it be in trades, the business, or the profession, the engineer comes in contact with men in almost every walk in life. The young engineer is first brought into contact with his employer and his fellows who are similarly employed. With his advancement, relation with the will be established with customers and clients, and the work he is called upon to perform is likely to entail relations with many others. It may require the employment and supervision of workmen. It is likely to involve a contact with manufacturers and contractors. It may involve contact with officials of private or public corporations, clients, lawyers, investors, bankers, and a great variety of other persons, having various interests more or less antagonistic in his relation with the different men encountered in the various lines of engineering work, conflicts of personal opinions, personal interest, and personal rights will arise, which must frequently affect his course of action. A clear appreciation of the proper attitude he should assume in these various relations and his proper personal and professional conduct is of great importance of his growth, development, and future usefulness. The engineering must frequently take part in preparation of estimates, specification, and contracts. Estimating requires a knowledge of ways and means, an appreciation of the contingencies which may be encountered, and a knowledge of cost of labor and materials, of transportation and construction charges. The preparation of contracts and specification requires an extent knowledge and experience. They involve certain legal and certain customary requirements, a knowledge of how work can and should be performed, and a sense of fairness and equity. Proper care and in the performance of this duty will largely obviate the chances of misunderstanding and dispute, will reduce future complication and render his further duties less difficult and more satisfactory. So engineer must need this experience to meet different people for them to build their character and for them to use in the future and make a good engineer. Technical and scientific preparation. The essential aim of technical education is not so much to impart technical knowledge to the student as to furnish the training which will be enabled him to understand and investigate the conditions which surround a problem to determine the fundamental principles on which its successful solution depends, to ascertain and analyze the elements which influence or modify it, to design and structures and work needed for its successful development, and to supervise or superintend the proper construction of such constructors of work and carry them to consummation of successful and economical completion. The amount of knowledge that can be retained in the mind at any one time is limited. The time spent in a university course as well as mental capacity of the student are both too limited for the acquisition of anything more than the elements of knowledge needed by the practicing engineer. Even the practicing engineer can retain only those facts and principles that have been specially impressed on his mind by constant use. The most important acquirement, therefore, for the student in or out of college is not detailed knowledge of engineering principles, natural laws, technical methods, and detailed facts, except where such matters are needed for immediate use, but the ability to ascertain and apply the correct principles and data when needed for professional purposes. It is evident that wide range of work above outlined requires not only technical knowledge and experience but ability to proper and clear oral and written expression, a knowledge of finance, economics, business methods, and of legal relations. When the young engineer enters practice, he still needs to acquire experience and to study, observe, and investigate subjects connected with the specialty, all of which is necessary for advancement work, which he can obtain to the best advantage concomitant with the practice of his profession. For success in engineering must acquire a working knowledge of first, the fundamental principle of those sciences on which his work depends and judgment in the application. Second, the method and calculation which must be applied in such practice and skill and accuracy in their use. Third, the use of language, including the ability to prepare and present both clear and concise oral and written explanation engineering problems. Fourth, business and engineering law, upon which the success of engineering projects depends, and without which few correct reports, specification, or contracts can be prepared. Fifth, the essential principles that concerns the personal relation of the engineer with his fellows, with his employments and clients, with his business associates, with laborers, and with the public, and also those principles of judgment, equity, and ethics upon which the highest success of every man depends. Every experienced engineer recognizes the convenience of formulas, but must also understand the danger of their careless application, and the application of all theory to practice must be modified by the judgment in order to take into account factors often unrecognized in theoretical consideration. So, engineering don't need just knowledge alone, but also knowledgeable on how to use and apply in their field of works. And they also need to know how to recognize the their carelessness to avoid danger in the future. Knowledge of English. A knowledge of English and the ability to express his meaning in clear and concise and convincing language, both oral and written, is an asset of great value to the engineer. The ability to prepare and present with the oral or written words the rationale of the problem to be solved and its proper solution are often as important as the ability to recognize and solve the problem. An intelligent discussion of conditions that obtain a proper presentation of the principles involved and a clear elucidation of the proper methods for its solution, so that each of these matters will be understood by the business or professional man by whom the problem is presented, is a most function of education. This ability of expression can be acquired only by practice and by the constant endeavor of the engineer in the preparation of his work to place himself in the mental attitude of the one who is to hear and read the matter presented. The preparation of reports and specification is broad subject that touches almost every limit of human activity, and its proper performance is acquired only by long experience, careful study, and detailed knowledge. Certain principles, however, can be readily acquired and understood, which, if followed out, will lead the way to their successful preparation. Material, labor, machinery, or supplies to be purchased or contracted for must be ordered, and agreement more or less formal for furnishing the same must in every case be entered into. Such agreement vary from the simple form of verbal order and acceptance for the smallest supply to the most elaborate contract and specification for the most complex machinery or plant involving thousands of dollars. If such agreements are not properly and clearly prepared, they may involve needless misunderstanding and expensive litigation. The use of good language, oral or written, is acquired only by constant study and practice, and is needed by the engineering in letters, instruction, reports, papers, and specification which he is frequently called upon to prepare. A knowledge of technical language is acquired by professional study, and practical experience in special lines is highly essential for correct technical reports, instruction, and specification writing. Legal relation. It is the duty of every citizen to inform himself in regard to the fundamental and elementary law under which he lives and on which his legal rights and privileges depend, that He shall have a clear conception of his own rights and privileges and those of his neighbors and business associates. It is important for the engineer to acquire a knowledge of those fundamental principles of law which must clearly govern and control his social and business relations and his special professional activities, including the laws of contracts, in which he is often especially interested either as principal or as a arbiter. The engineer should be sufficiently informed concerning those legal matters which affect his duties and responsibilities to know when all ordinary legal requirements are observed in drawing up engineering papers as may be necessary in his works, and to see that the action, attitudes, and decision of himself and his subordinates are legal, and that are legal rights of his clients, business and association, and of himself are properly conserved. Engineer must be knowledgeable with the law in their field for them to know their limit on what to do and not to do. Also for them to know their rights and the rights of the people around them in their field of work. And also they need to know the law for them to handle legal action like contracts.
Hi everyone, my name is Jan Conquesto, BSEE 4A, reporter number 15, and I am here to report about contract specification and engineering relation in chapter 2, which is success in engineering profession. Success in engineering profession. So it begins in personal success. So what is personal success? Success in life, like success in the construction of engineering structure that requires a good and proper foundation on which to build. So when we talk about success, success is measured by many means in many ways. The best success is not measured by wealth or great power, nor by the greatest amount of ideal pressure. The pursuit of any of these single purposes does not result in the greatest happiness. The greatest success results from well-balanced life and should usually include, so first, suitable friend and family relation. For the greatest success does not come with solitude. So when you have a suitable relation of your friend and family, so it feels like you are comfort in both times of joy and distress. Relationship is a strong protective factor against mental illnesses and help to increase our mental well-being. Remember, the greatest success does not come with solitude. You cannot have the greatest success if you are alone. So, second, sufficient income for the comfort of the individual, his family, and dependent, and to permit him to help those philanthropic movements in which all should take part. Third, a good personal, professional, and business reputation in his life work. Fourth, the respect of his friend and associate. And fifth, self-respect or the personal approval for his own conscience resulting from the proper observance of personal religions and ethic conviction. Success in engineering. Factor of success must be recognized. The attributes described in section 7 must be both acquired and properly exercised. They must develop in the individual those certain habits of industry and traits of characters which are demanded and professional and businessmen by their employers, client and associate, and without which the individual will be at a great disadvantage in the practical affairs of life. The successful solution of any problem depends on both comprehensive knowledge and a proper application of all of the factors in which the solution depends. In order, therefore, to succeed in the various problems of professional and business life, it is no less essential that all of the factors of success shall be duly appreciated and given the proportionate weight which the impedance demands, which might be written on any of many factors of success, but only a brief discussion on some of the most important seems warranted. Common sense and judgment must extend the list of supply further details. If a limited discussion is not sufficient to convince a man of the essential nature of the characteristic discussed, the further elaboration would result only in waste of both space and time. The man who will win success will be able to recognize its essential elements without extended discussion. Opinion of the profession. Opinion of engineering profession. For some years, a joint committee of engineering education from the National Technical Society of the United States has been investigating engineering education, and by arrangement with the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, a detailed investigation has been undertaken to determine the qualification necessary for success engineering work. In the spring of 1915, letters were sent to the members of all the National Technical Society requesting individual opinion on the essential characteristic of engineer. A report was made in spring of 1916 as a result of this investigation, in which the essential factors were summarized into 6 groups, which were numbered into order the importance and determined by the frequency of their occurrence in about 1015 replies. In the basis of this preliminary work, a new letter was sent out to the member of the society, asking for further consideration of 6 characteristic groups previously outlined. To this letter, 5,441 replies were received, sufficient definite for qualification. From this letter, the most probable value of the relative importance of this group of qualities were computed with the following result, which seems to indicate a rather definite ideal and the professional engineer as the characteristic necessary for the greatest success. So, the revised and the original rating of the letter, I will show it in the screen. It must not be understood that any single arrangement of these 6 groups actually indicate the views of the professional men as the essential characteristics of engineer. For each and every position, for it is manifest that each individual should have the essential characteristic developed to the greatest advantage for the particular position which he occupies. Each must be capable of proper performance of his duty, and his lack of essential characteristic is necessarily fatal to his success. The mental use in engineering constructions are in most cases alloys and consist of combination of various elements, some of which are essentials and some of which are considered impurities. Nevertheless, each element, whenever its character has amount of particular influence on the character of alloys, if any is missing of any chance the entire characteristic of alloy and make it unfit for some particular use. For the greatest usefulness in any particular place, each element must be present to the extent needed. In the same manner of many may be useless in the engineering position, even though his character, judgment, efficiency, and understanding of men may be high developed, unless he has a proper knowledge of the fundamentals of engineering science and the technique of practice, and yet at all professional position which involve fiduciary relations. Judgment. The very keystone of successful engineering practice is judgment. The development of judgment requires personal investigation, personal consideration, and personal conclusion, and should be based on a well-balanced appreciation of both theory and practice. In the development of judgment, the dicta of instructors, the statement of textbook, and the opinion of the conclusion of others must questioned, and can be accepted only when satisfied the fullest inquiry and analysis. In other words, the engineer, in order to develop his judgment, must learn to think for himself, to form and hold opinions, of his own and to base those opinions on a substantial, comprehensive, and thoughtful consideration of both theoretical principle and practical result. So, analysis, problem solving, mathematical problem, theory, and all the struggle that we are facing now is the key to develop our thinking capability to decide our own decision and the way to become a successful engineer. Personal bias, that all men are the greater or less degree bias in their judgment of themselves and of others and of all problems and conditions with which they come in contact is established by common experience. This bias is due to their individuality, their association, their local individual experience, their education and special knowledge, and their personal interests. That this bias is possessed by others and injurious affect their judgment is easily recognized. It is more difficult for the individuals to recognize such bias in themselves. It is, however, most important for the engineer to recognize his own bias and to provide for it by elimination so far as possible and by the same factor of safety which he applies to other uncertainties to acquire his knowledge is perhaps the most difficult in the practical education of engineer. So we have bias of special knowledge, bias of personal experience, bias of local experience, bias of personal interest, and bias of association. Personality. The personality of the individual is of great importance and has a marked effect on his advancement. Good appearance, good address, proper self-confidence, and self-respect, the evidences of intelligence and energy, the ability of proper expression, of proper consideration of the feelings and right of others, mark the man for higher position and better things. Great ability and high technical knowledge and training may hold respect through the personality is unfavorable, but such respect is given not because of such personality, but in spite of it. So, personality, it show your personal appearance, punctuality, attention to business, concentration. So, in personal appearance is also worthy of consideration for impression are based on appearance which is strongly indicate of character. Punctuality, lack of punctuality is due to heedlessness, carelessness, lack of concentration, of which is a serious detriment to the individual prospect. So, attention to business. He should devote his attention to his legitimate work. Concentration. The ability to concentrate one attention on the immediate problem for concentration is primary requisite for success. Professional improvement. In order to grow and to develop, the engineering must acquaint himself with ideas and activities of others who are working on his own field. It is therefore essential that the young engineer should mingle with his fellow and compare his idea with those of others in professional line. He should early associate himself with those technical societies before which those problems of engineering in which he is particularly or generally interested are discussed, and he should at least listen to or read the papers and discuss of others, both in the society proceeding and the technical papers, in order that he may gain a proper idea of current engineering and practice and judge and appreciate the limitation of his own ability. So, young engineer should seek information on the various phases of engineering work. This is to develop individual ability, opportunity to improve your work as an engineer. So, that's all. Thank you and God bless.